So dear students, in my previous class that I had explained about the children at work from the book It So Happened. Today also from the same book, the new chapter which I am going to teach you, that is the selfish giant. So in this chapter that we will come to know about the real importance of a child. Children are very beautiful creation by God, as they are very much innocent. Who does not love the child? We ought to love the child because each and every activity a child does, don't think so that the child he himself or she herself does. No. The God helps them because they are so delicate to look at. And for this reason, that every person that loves the child. So children are really very innocent. Children are a very beautiful, the great work that created by the God. And those who do not really love the child, of course that their life is meaningless. So here also that we will come to know about the selfish giant. And so this story is between the selfish giant and the children. Children freely, without any tension, without any fear, that they play, they read, they go to school, no anxiety at all. Their heart is very pure. And so that there is no certain kind of the selfishness inside the heart of the child. We ourselves actually differentiate about the child. We ourselves that due to our own selfishness that we do not love the child. We hate child. Absolutely not that it must be done. If we do not really love the child, if we really hate the child, then definitely that one day it will so happen that our life also would be just like a forest, just like a useless. So through this story that you can come to know that how the selfish giant actually that hates the child. He himself wants to be very superior in comparison to the child. And at last that what happens, that also that we will come to know. So I am reading the line by line over here, and you please go through. The giant's garden was beautiful, and the children loved to play in it. The giant, who was selfish, built a high wall around the lovely garden. Children did not enter the garden thereafter, nor did the spring and summer, till the giant experienced a change of heart. So, when the giant actually built a high wall around his garden, as he did not allow the other child also to enter into the garden. So thereafter what happened? There was no spring seasoning to the perfect garden. And till that only that the mist and the frost that also that it took place into the garden. And then after that the giant had a very bitter experience without the presence of the children, and his heart changed. So how did his heart change? That you will come to know. Every afternoon as they were coming from school, the children used to go and play in the giant's garden. It was a large lovely garden with soft green grass. Here and there over the grass stood beautiful flowers like stars, and there were 12 peach trees that in the springtime broke into delicate blossoms of pink and pearl, and in the autumn bore rich fruit. The birds sat on the tree and sang so sweetly that the children used to stop their games in order to listen them. How happy we are here, they cried to each other. One day the giant came back. He had been to visit his friend, the Cornish ogre, and had stayed with him for 7 years. When he arrived, he saw the children playing in the garden. "What are you doing here?" he cried in a very gruff voice, and the children ran away. So there was a large garden that just after the school, during evening hours, that the children used to play into that garden without knowing that whose garden that it was. And freely that they were playing. As they were playing over there, that the trees also felt very delight to see the creations of the child. And many children also that stayed and played freely. Even the birds also sang very beautifully by seeing or by looking the face of the children. So in order to listen the sweet song of the bird, the children also stopped playing and they all listened very happily that the sweet song that sung by the birds. So as a daily routine that it was happening so. Thank God during that time the giant was not there. In fact, the giant had gone to the Cornish ogre. It means that he had gone to some other place to visit his friend. And since that you know, the giants are the really that the man-eater also. This very good examples that we can go through from our epic that is Mahabharata. Do you remember that when Bhim along with his family that they all were roaming into the forest, as the Duryodhana actually had played a very bad role against them. He had prepared the big house of the La, in Hindi that it is La, and La is very much sensitive to the fire. So luckily that all the Pandus, luckily they escaped from that house, that had building, and they all that hid in an unknown place. So they were roaming around here and there, and they met that one, the giant, that his name was Hidamba. And you know that his sister's name was Hidam. So that they were the man-eaters. It seemed like that the giant also here, that he was man-eaten. He had gone to some other place. Means he had gone to visit the friend's house to eat the man's flesh. And after a week so, when the giant came to his own garden, he saw that into his garden that many children were playing. So by looking this, giant became very angry, very furious with them. And he asked very angrily to all the children that what are you doing here? He cried in a very gruff voice. The word gruff, it means that is rough. He spoke very roughly to the children that what they were doing. And by looking his face, and as the giant was very angry, all the children that ran away from the garden. And then after, what did the giant say? My own garden is my own garden, said the giant. Anyone can understand that. And I will allow nobody to play in it but myself. So he built a high wall all around it and put up a notice board So you are looking in the book that it has been written in bold letters, in capital letters, that was trespassers will be prosecuted. It means that anyone without taking any permission that will be charged, will be fined, will be arrested. So what did the giant speak? He spoke very angrily that was his own garden, and except him no one is allowed to enter into the garden. He himself said that better that he would play, but he will not allow any child to enter his own garden. And what did he do? That he built a high wall around the garden, and he put up a notice board also for writing that trespassers will be prosecuted. He was a very selfish giant. The poor children had now nowhere to play. They tried to play on the road, but the road was very dusty and full of hard stones, and they did not like it. They used to wander around the high walls when their lessons were over and talk about the beautiful garden inside, how happy we were there, they said to each other. Then the spring came, and all over the country there were the little blossoms and little birds. Only the garden of the selfish giant, it was still winter. The birds did not care to sing in it, as they were no children, and the trees forgot to blossom. Once a beautiful flower puts its head out from the grass, but when he saw the notice board, he was so sorry for the children that it slipped back onto the ground again and went off to sleep. The only people who were pleased were the snow and the frost. The spring has forgotten this garden, they cried, so we will live here all the year around. The snow covered up the grass with the great white cloak, and the frost painted all the trees silver. Then they invited the north wind to stay with them, and he came. He was wrapped in furs, and he rolled all day about the garden. They blew the chimney pots down. This is a delightful spot, he said. We must ask hail on a visit. So the hail came. Every day for 3 hours he rattled on the roof of the castle till he broke most of the slates, and then he ran around and round, and the garden as fast as he could go. He was dressed in cream, and his breath was like ice. I cannot understand why the spring is so late in coming, said the selfish giant, as he sat at the window and looked out at the cold white garden. I hope there will be a change in weather. But the spring never came, nor the summer. The autumn gave the golden fruit to every garden, but to the giant's garden she gave none. He is too selfish, she said, as it was the winter there, and the north wind and the hail and the frost and the snow danced about through the trees. One morning the giant was lying awake in bed when he heard some lovely music. It sounded so sweet to his ears that he thought it must be the king's musicians passing by. It was really only a little linnet that singing outside his window, but it was so long since he had heard a bird singing in his garden that it seemed to him to be the most beautiful music in the world. Then the hail that stopped dancing over his head, and the north wind ceased that rolling, and a delicious perfume that came to him through the open casement. And I believe the spring has come at last, said the giant, and he jumped out of the bed and looked out. So after that, what happened? The giant sensed that the giant was a very selfish. And what happened to the poor children? They did not have the proper place to play, because the giant had already built a high walls around of the garden. So the children, just after finishing their homework or the lessons, as they came out to play, but they could not play. They could not enter into the garden. Even that they wanted to play on road, but the road was also full of stones, very rough road, so that they could not play it. So simply that they were imagining that how happy they were when they were playing into the garden. And afterwards, that the summer season also that came, and since that that the spring season also that came, and during the spring that everywhere there is a flower, the blooming of the flowers. The new tender green leaves also that appear into the tree. So that the nature looks very beautiful during the springtime. But there was no spring into the garden of the giant. Why? Because that the giant had not allowed any child to enter into the garden. And as I said, that the children are a very innocent, very beautiful creation of the God. So without child, a family is nothing. Even a society is nothing. It is the child only that who entertains to ourselves, to mother, to father, to elder brother, elder sister. So children are really very beautiful creatures. Since there was no child into the garden of the giant, so that the spring also became very fed up, and it also that did not appear into the garden. So as a result, what happened? That into the particular garden, there was frost, there was mist, there was winter only. And since that it was winter into that particular garden, then they all invited the hails and the storms also, and the north wind also. They blew very fast, and that particular area into the garden of the giant, that it became very rough and tough. So then after that, what happened? Then the giant also realized, he was very much wondering that why particularly a spring season that in fact it has not appeared into his own garden. He could not understand. And the selfish giant that he sat near to his own window and looked out at the white garden, which was full of snow, where only that the cold wind was blowing very fast. So giant could not understand that what happened. And then after that, the winter was there, the north wind was there, hail was there, the frost was there, the snow also that they danced all together. So one day in the morning, when giant was actually lying awake in his bed, so he heard some very sweet and lovely music. And it appeared into the ear of the giant so beautifully that the giant actually understood or thought or imagined that it must be the king's musician that would have come to play or who have come to pass by. but not, it was not there, it was a linnet. Linnet is a kind of a bird. So that is, it has already written into the book with all the word meanings. So linnet is a kind of a bird that which was or that was singing. And so the giant also seemed very happy to listen this. And since that linnet was singing into the garden of the giant, so that the hail that also stopped, even the north wind they also stopped, and the delicious perfume, a delicious fragrance that came through the open casement. Here the word casement means that is window. And the giant thought himself, he will imagine that really that the spring that has come at last. So let it be after this much. The part 1 that I have taught to you, I have given my explanations. Then you go through about it, and further queries also that we will come to know, then we will have a discussion. Then again that tomorrow or later on that we will teach you about the second part of the selfish giant. Thank you.